This is Evangelist Henry Walker. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I want to continue a message from the last podcast talking about the hidden truths in the book of Revelation and also ways that are contained in the book of Revelation to avoid those terrible events that's going to happen during the Great Tribulation. But let's go to Father in prayer first. Father, I thank you for another opportunity to minister to your people, Father. I ask you to use me just the way you want, Father. Let me say only what you want me to say, nothing more and nothing less. And Father, help people to open up their spirits and not only receive the word, but study the word for themselves. And Father, we give you all the praise and the honor, Father, in the mighty name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. So go with me to the book of Revelation, chapter 10. See, so many people believe that the book of Revelation is a revelation of the beast and the false prophet. And it is to a certain extent, but in Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, the Father mentions that this is the revelation of Yeshua. And book of Revelation, like the rest of the word, is a gift from the Father to us to understand more. Revelation chapter 10 and verse 8, and a voice which I heard from heaven spoke unto me again and said, Go and take the little book which is open in the hand of the angel which standeth upon the sea and upon the earth. And I went unto the angel and said unto him, Give me the little book. And he said unto me, Take it and eat it up, and it shall make thy belly bitter, but it shall be in thy mouth sweet as honey. And I took the little book out of the angel's hand and ate it up, and it was in my mouth sweet as honey. And as soon as I had eaten it, my belly was bitter. And he said unto me in verse 11, Thou must prophesy again before many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. This is a message to us. See, the book of Revelation is so sweet to us because we'll be going with Yeshua in the Rapture, and we won't be going to this Great Tribulation and the events that are mentioned here in the book of Revelation. But some people is going to be bitter because they'll miss the Rapture and have to go through this Great Tribulation. In chapter 12, Revelation chapter 12, in verse 1, And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. See, a lot of what some of you are going through is this birth canal experience. You're ready to give birth to your ministry, your purpose, your destiny. A blessing is ready to happen. Yeah, and you feel pressure and you feel like you're closed in, maybe. It's like that birth canal experience. The baby is outside the womb, now in the birth canal. It's so different, and that baby is scared. It's a whole change. Some of you are going through a change right now. And you may feel strange in your flesh, but your spirit is feeling so great. Because now you're about ready to get into your purpose and your destiny. And this is the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles. And it's the time to go forward, as we mentioned on podcasts concerning the Feast of Tabernacles. It's time to go forward into your purpose and your destiny. And the same thing is mentioned here in Revelation chapter 12. Again, you're feeling strange, but just follow Yeshua into your purpose and your destiny. No weapon formed against us shall ever prosper. And every tongue that comes against us in judgment, we shall condemn. Why? Because we're the Father's servants, and our righteousness is of Him. See, the Father has a remnant, and the Father wants us to network with other people in the remnant. They can help us, we can help them. So what he's saying here is that you may feel strange. You're ready to give birth again to that ministry, to that purpose, to that destiny, to that blessing that you've been waiting years and years for. Just trust the Father. Abide in Him. Have that refuge in Him. Revelation chapter 17. I want to spend some time talking about this Babylon system. Revelation chapter 17, verse 1. And it came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, and I'll show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sits upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunken with the wine of her fornication. In verse 3, so he carried me away into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon. Incidentally, we just talked about the woman going into the wilderness. A wilderness is a beautiful experience with the Father. It's you and him. And right after the wilderness experience comes a promotion. So don't be afraid of being in the wilderness with the Father. He's trying to teach you something. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience. And all that's on your mind is you and him. It's a great way for him to take sin out of people's lives because they're in a wilderness and the only person who can get them out of that wilderness is the Father. Don't even think about sinning. Peter talked about how they, going to a wilderness, they ceased from sin. So it's a wonderful experience. And she was led into the wilderness, into her place by the Father in Revelation chapter 12. That woman who gave birth to the man-child. So in verse 3, again, he carried me away in the Spirit into the wilderness. There's so many revelations that the Father can give you when you're in the wilderness with him. And the reason for a wilderness is because he wants to get us closer to him. Maybe he wants us to read the word more, pray more, worship him more. And he really gets our attention in the wilderness. So again in verse 3, so he carried me away in the Spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. This is describing a religious organization that the spirit of Babylon, that Babylonian spirit, started to flow through and is flowing so much right now. It's the largest religious denomination in the world, without mentioning their name. This organization has its roots in Constantine and his form of Christianity that he established 1700 years ago. And that Babylonian system doctrine has affected so many congregations. And that system, that doctrine is what the Father's talking about, coming down, Babylon. There's some beautiful people in this organization, but it's the doctrine, it's this pagan doctrine that's come down from Constantine to this organization, to many congregations that the Father's going to bring down. In verse 14, and the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And incidentally, in their services, they have this cup that's supposed to be the blood of Yeshua, and they have a host called, this is the body of Yeshua, which is totally demonic. And upon her head in verse 5 was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Yeshua. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration because the buildings look so great. And this particular organization, this religious organization where this Babylonian spirit, the spirit of Babylon is flowing through, killed 69 million people during the Spanish Inquisition, and no apologies. In verse 9, and here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are the 7 mountains or hills on which the woman sitteth. Revelation 18, and keep your hand there. I want you to go back to Daniel chapter 12. And keep your hand in Revelation, as I mentioned. Revelation 18. Go back to Daniel. It's after Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel. Before Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah. I want to show you in Revelation 18 how the Father slowed down that Babylonian system. Gave us more time. Daniel chapter 12. In verse 1. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book. It's talking about the rapture, and it's talking about the Great Tribulation, the revelation of the beast. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Talking about that rapture. But in verse 5, then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other 2, the one on one side of the bank of the river, and the other on the side of the bank of the river, and the other on that side of the bank of the river. Those are the 2 towers, the twin towers. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, the Hudson River, How long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swore by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times and a half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the set apart people, all these things shall be finished. In verse 8, and I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O my Yeshua, what shall be the end of these things? He said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end. So back in Revelation chapter 18, this chapter is talking about those twin towers coming down. It's such a shame that so many people got killed. But the Father slowed down that Babylonian system contained in those two towers. Chapter 18, Revelation, verse 1. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his presence. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon, the great, is fallen, those two towers, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. And these two planes that crashed into the twin towers looked like birds to John as he was writing the book of Revelation, and went into a cage. The way he looked at it, it looked like he was going into a cage. In verse 3, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacy. That's the World Trade Center. Merchants, trading. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. There's so much contained in that religious organization that I mentioned in those twin towers. The Father had to let it be destroyed to slow down that Babylonian system, to give us more time. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and the Father had remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works in the cup which she had filled to her double. That's that cup, that chalice that they have in their services. How much she had praised herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she said in her heart, I sit as a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. This organization is not based on Yeshua, it's based on Mary. They call Mary the Queen of Heaven. And Mary had to be in the temple on the Feast of Pentecost. She was one of the 120 that were there. Therefore in verse 8 shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is Yahweh Elohim, who judged her. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, that's New York. How many evil things have come out of New York? They made a law to kill a baby outside the womb in New York. I'm not saying New Yorkers, because I'm from New York. I'm just saying that city, that political party that's running New York City, is not of the Father. It's evil. And read verse 10 again. Standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour does thy judgment come down. Some of you remember, it's about 1 hour, they both came down. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. Again, the World Trade Center. The merchants of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and of fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all thine wood. In their buildings they have the pearls and fine linen and precious stones and purple and thine wood and all manner vessels of ivory and all manner vessels of the most precious wood and of brass and of iron and marble. Most of the buildings are built of marble. And cinnamon, and odors, and ointments, and frankincense, and wine, and oil, and fine flour, and wheat, and beasts, and sheep, and horses, and chariots, and slaves, and the souls of men. This organization in France promised people that they could pray loved ones who had died out of purgatory, which is not mentioned in the word, by paying an indulgence. They became the largest single landowner in France as a result of that, this organization. In verse 14, and the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from you, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from you, and thou shalt find them no more at all. When Yahweh brings his vengeance, his judgment, there's nothing left. In verse 15, the merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour, there's that 1 hour again, so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster, again, this is New York Harbor there, Hudson River, and all the company in ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And he cast dust on their heads. How much dust came down from the destruction of these towers? And cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour, the third time I mentioned it, is she made desolate. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and you set apart apostles and prophets, for the Father had avenged you on her. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. They came down so quickly and so powerfully. In verse 22, and it shows you this religious organization that Revelation 18 is talking about. And the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman, and whatsoever craft he be, shall be found any more in you. And the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in you, and the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in you, and the voice of a bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in you. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain under the earth. Again, the 69 million people that this organization killed in the Spanish Inquisition, trying to get people to deny Yeshua. And I talk about the trumpeters. In Italy is the headquarters of this organization, with the trumpeters. Again, the light of a candle shall shine no more in this organization. This organization believes so much in lighting candles. And the voice of a bridegroom and the bride shall be no more heard. This is showing that it's a religious organization, and you go to the Father and you see which religious organization this is. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not just this organization, but it's a doctrine that came down from Constantine to this organization and spread to so many Christian congregations. And it's this doctrine that'll be the end time religious doctrine that'll make up that one world religion that the Father's talking about. Babylon, Babylon is fallen, is coming down. That system, that pagan teaching will come down in the name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. And you'll find that what this organization has in common with some beautiful Christian congregations is this Babylonian doctrine from Constantine. And again, that doctrine is coming down in the name of Yeshua by the blood of Yeshua. In chapter 19, Revelation chapter 19, in verse 1, and after these things I heard a great voice of much people in heaven saying, Hallelujah, salvation and praise and honor and power unto Yahweh or Elohim, for true and righteous are his judgments. For he had judged the great whore, which did corrupt the earth with her fornication, and avenged the blood of his servants at her hand. Again, that 69 million people were killed in the Spanish Inquisition. And the 24 elders and 4 beasts fell down and worshipped the Father that sat on the throne. We said in Revelation chapter 4, too, there's only one sitting upon the throne. And that one person is Yeshua. The Father we're going to see throughout eternity is in the face of Yeshua. In verse 7, let us be glad and rejoice and give honor to him. For the marriage of the Lamb is come, and his wife had made herself ready. That's us. Now, I talk about it in every podcast that we need to surrender everything to the Father, especially our flesh. Ask him to come into our spirit, fill us with his spirit, mortify the deeds of our flesh on a daily basis, making us more like Yeshua and bringing the fruit of the Spirit out of our lives. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. He puts us on the sanctification process, and every day he points out things in our life that he wants to take out. And at the end of the week, that's why one of the reasons the Sabbath is so very important. From Friday 6 p.m. to Saturday 6 p.m. is the Sabbath. It's a time where he wants to do that spiritual operation on us that he has prepared us for every day during that week. It's a preview of heaven. It's written with the finger of the Father. Can never be done away with. Yeshua in Luke chapter 4, as his custom was, the word says, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath and he preached. Paul in Acts chapter 13 preached to the Jews in the synagogue on the Sabbath, and the Gentiles said, Paul preached to us the next Sabbath. And he did, and the whole city came out. It actually says in Isaiah 66 verse 23 that in that millennium, that 1,000-year period of time, that the Feast of Tabernacle is talking about, from one Sabbath to another Sabbath, Isaiah said, nations shall come and worship the King, Yeshua, in Jerusalem. And we also talked about the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, Zechariah chapter 14, verse 16 to 21. It talks about the Feast of Tabernacles, that anybody who didn't come to Jerusalem to worship the King during that 1,000-year period of time, the millennium, there'd be no rain and plagues will come their way. So it's important. We're getting ready for the rapture. But it's also going to be so beautiful at the end of the 7 years to be with him in Jerusalem. That 1,000-year period of time, we'll be teaching people about Yeshua. And as we just mentioned here, during that 7 years, we'll be involved with the marriage supper of the Lamb. In verse 11, chapter 19, at the end of that 7 years, and I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True. That's Yeshua. And in righteousness he does judge and make war. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written that no man knew, but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of the Father. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses. That's us, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. And out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, and he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of the Almighty Father. And he had on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings, and he's the Yahweh. Then in verse 17, I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God, that you may eat the flesh of the kings and the captains. This goes back to Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 17 to 20. Those nations that come against Israel, only 1/7 of them will be left, be destroyed, and the beasts and the fowls of the air will have a great supper. In verse 19, I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together, and these beasts and these fowls. In verse 18, that you may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that judged, and them that worship his image. These were both cast alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone. And remember that it's not the beast that sets up the mark of the beast, it's the false prophet. And again, that mark of the beast and the mark of the Father is a spiritual mark. It's who we worship. And as I mentioned on the last podcast, This temptation that this beast will have on so many people in the world will be such a great temptation, similar to the temptation that Eve and Adam faced in the garden. It'd be a strong temptation, and it's important to seek Yahweh. Draw closer to Him. He's our refuge and our strength. Read Psalm 46, Psalm 29, Psalm 51, verse 1 to 13. Pour your heart out to Him. We need to worship Him in spirit and truth. Allow Him to work on us on a daily basis. So before I get back to the message, I want to remind some of you that this is a pro-life ministry. We believe that life begins at conception. In every podcast, I pray for the babies in the womb. And maybe some of you don't know that the babies in the womb, their heart begins to beat around 18 days. And around 4 months, their hearts are pumping about 25 quarts of blood per day. These babies are a beautiful life, not a tissue. They're a purpose wrapped up in flesh, a purpose ordained by the Father. So I'm going to pray for the babies in the womb right now. Remember I told you that testimony about this neighbor who had a friend of his. She was pregnant with a baby girl, and the doctor said she's a Down syndrome baby. And me and some others prayed, and this baby is 5 months old right now, and this baby is perfect. So I'm going to pray for the babies in the womb right now. Father, I ask you to touch those babies in the womb. Bring them to a full birth, Father. And we give you all the praise and the honor, Father. In the mighty name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. And if any of you had an abortion, just repent. Ask the Father to forgive you. And go on and follow Him into purpose and destiny. And don't look back. Also, I mention in every podcast that if your flesh is giving you any worried thoughts, fearful thoughts, thoughts that are not from the Father, say out loud, Yeshua, I thank you for that crown of thorns around your head. That was for me. That means my mind is protected by your blood. I only think your thoughts. And give these thoughts to the Father and go on. So again, we're talking from the book of Revelation. The Father is bringing out some beautiful hidden truths in that book. So many people think it's a revelation of the Antichrist. No, it's a revelation of Yeshua. And we're going to continue in the next podcast. And on my website, I have so many written messages and 2 free books on the bottom of the written message page. Noon, and Is the Trinity Really a Mystery? And the number 1 message on that written message is about when was Yeshua born, when did He die, when did He rise? It's so important to realize that He was born on Passover, died on Passover. And that one message gets rid of 3 of those pagan holidays, Easter, Christmas, and Good Friday, all in one message. Other messages on there about the truth about wine. Wine is a mocker. The truth about divorce and remarriage, all based on the Word. And also, if you enjoy these podcasts, tell other people about these podcasts, share, subscribe, hit the like button, and remember to next time. This is Evangelist Henry Walker saying, greater is the Father in you, your daddy, the King of the universe, than anything or anybody in the world.